Колеги, всім доброго дня. Український
UCMC continues its work. The topic of the next press conference is revealing the skeletons in the closet of the old State Reserve Agency of Ukraine and first achievements of the reforms. Vadim Moiseichuk, head of the State Reserve Agency of Ukraine, Oleg Prokopchuk, first deputy head of the State Reserve Agency of Ukraine, Tatiana Yakubovich, legal advisor to the head of the State Reserve Agency of Ukraine. And Mikhailo Bessarab, head of the Civil Council of the State Reserve Agency of Ukraine.
Доброго дня, шановні.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. Allow me to start this press conference. This is the first press conference of the new team of the leadership of the State Reserve Agency of Ukraine, which started working in July 2015. Today we'll be talking about innovations which new leadership is introducing. We'll be talking about cutting down the apparatus, optimization of the structure of companies which are part of the agency, about introduction of the European program of reforming State Reserve, and that was done based on the best practices of European countries. And we will talk about implementation of European directive and many other interesting issues. I believe that we will hear more details from the head of the agency, Vadim Moiseichuk, and his colleagues. Good afternoon. I will try to be very short to give answer to your questions. How can new team, which came from business, having political support? In our case, that's Minister of Economy Aivaras Abramovičius. How did we manage to make steps not just in fighting corruption, but also in changing the old Soviet system to new European-oriented system. 8 months ago, was invited by the minister with the objective to reform the system of State Reserve and combating corruption. First thing we did, I invited to my team the new people. I have had 7 now, 6 left, having the support of the minister and the message. We introduced some novelties. Those people who believe that there's nothing in the system are mistaken. Despite the fact, I can openly say that despite the fact that the system of State Reserve was basically robbed, but we still have many material values in this system. The system was executing its responsibilities. The results of the audit show not very good picture. We had about 9,000 responsible reservers, but in fact we only 319 entities had the mobilization reserve.
Там були виявлені цінності тільки у 37 із 45 відповідальних зберігачів. Ви вже знаєте, що ще минулого року
The Minister of Economy published the data. There were some deficiencies, big deficiencies, but that was last year. In the result of this big inventory work, we found out that basically starting from 1991, the problem of the system of state reserve was not, the issues have not been addressed. The main debtors are Naftogaz Ukraine, 374 million grivnas, 350 grivnas Khlyb of Ukraine. All these debts were accumulated from 1996 till 2003. These material values were allocated in the past but were not returned to the state reserve. Also, in the result of the audit, we registered that the values which were stolen were 1.7 billion grivnas, about 1 billion grivna of industrial products. All these problems had been accumulated for years, and no attention was paid to that. So first thing we did, in the result of audit, the state inspections started working with our main debtors, and we found out that more than 3.2 billion grivnas are in the applied to the court. We applied to the court related to that. The companies which we believe to be companies which participated in money laundering were like more than 1 billion. A company which supplied bad quality canned food for the amount of 1 million grivnas. All these figures, on the one hand, are shocking. On the other hand, they demonstrate that the cleaning of the system will take not 1 quarter, maybe many years.
90 днів, коли ми вже мали оперативні показники щодо
So we have developed the concept and presented it at the roundtable Ukraine European Union. You can see on the slides the sense of the reform is we take this huge system of state reserve, we reduce it to optimal, effective status. We optimize the number of the companies which are storing the reserves, and we show that we are able to manage. We are able to manage not just material values but cash. That's one of the know-hows that we offered within the framework of the concept. This concept was developed, and in the nearest future it will be submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers for consideration. I know that practically all the ministries have approved the concept. The team of the State Reserve has developed the new draft law on strategic reserves. The know-how is to introduce cash. Will be managing both material values and cash like it is in Europe. We introduced the mechanism of automatic update.
зберігання. Ми запропонували термін 50.
We suggest the term of 50%. If 50% of time passed, we automatically send it for storing. And the system will be different. It's not like now. We are waiting for several months. In a few months, we send away material values, dispatch material values. So this is the system which exists in Poland. We suggested the system of reporting by local authorities. That is done for us to see wider picture. I believe that my colleagues will continue describing these know-hows. And this draft was submitted to the Ministry of Economy, and we believe that this draft will be registered in the Verkhovna Rada. The corruption in the system of the State Reserve is practically absent. What do I mean by practically? That means that we are making steps. We're introducing European standards, and we believe that if there are some details, they are of more day-to-day issues. Fighting corruption is not that easy, but is not that difficult. What we need is to understand what you are doing, and you have to set example to your colleagues. How did we manage to do that? From the very first days of the last year, we introduced the system of subordination of our companies. Every 500 hryvnias are to be approved by the central apparatus of the State Reserve. Full monitoring of what our companies and organizations are doing. Our heads are to report according to European model. Just like when I was the CEO in a foreign company, I was reporting now. Our heads are also reporting same way. They report about what has been done, what they are doing, and what is the action plan for the next months. Full re-attestation of the heads. We either have to work in new conditions of transparency and zero tolerance to corruption. I can tell you that only 10% of our heads understand that this is the way they have to work, and the conclusions were we dismissed most of them, of those who did not understand. 13 or 14 heads were dismissed, and the total number of heads is 26. We appointed 6 heads now on a competitive basis. And what's interesting, as soon as we would dismiss the head, next month, either the acting head or a person who would become the head, immediately after that the company would become a profit-making company.
Якщо будуть питання, я потім окремо
If you have questions, I will explain which heads we dismissed, and I can show you the results of some companies. Someone said that fighting corruption is not just to dismiss, but you have to get evidence and to give it to law enforcement bodies. We were doing it, but because we have a very close cooperation with special services, with the security service of Ukraine, the Ministry of the Interior, the Prosecutor's Office, the State Financial Inspection, which was helping us, we submitted documents for opening 5 criminal cases against these heads, and they were open. As to financial indicators, the net income of our companies was 345 hryvnias. In 2015, 350 million. The plan for this year is 408. If in 2014 the company was losing, in 2015 they were working with a profit, with the net margin of 2%. 5.5 million hryvnias were earned in the fourth quarter of last year. For this year, we have the plan of 10.5 million hryvnias of the profit. We are talking about EBITDA profitability of 10% and 5% net profitability. What else did we do? From the beginning of the year, from the 1st of January, understanding that the system should change from the inside, even if we change the heads, we introduced the system of motivation for CEOs when their actual revenues would go up several times. I used to ask those who were dismissed, how much did you get last month? They could not give an answer because you cannot live receiving 4,500 hryvnias. But from the 1st of January, they received from 20 to 60,000 hryvnias together with bonuses. Thanks to this, we can demand from the CEOs to introduce more effective mechanisms. We also suggested to merge our companies and organizations. First of all, we are talking about companies of agricultural sector. We suggested to merge 10 of our profitable companies into one legal entity, one holding, where we would be able to control more efficiently what will happen to that state company, a state holding. Let the government decide. As to oil companies, we also suggest to merge them into one company and to refuse from the state support this year, because state organizations, these are like an internal corruptionist in the system. De facto, they are profitable, but they continue to take money from the state budget. We plan to refuse from 50 million hryvnias of revenues to these organizations, revenues from the budget. The first results show that the state companies, they refuse from additional revenues from the budget, but they are profit-making now. Other companies that we do not see in the new system, they should be either liquidated or privatized. What else have we done? We opened all the tenders and we had negotiation with all the suppliers of the values, and we said, let's work according to the new model. You set the objective price, we organize objective tenders. Last year, the State Reserve managed to agree on reduction of price, and we saved more than 120 million hryvnias for the budget. This year, well, we expect that we will save about 50 million hryvnias on supply of diesel fuel. But the participants of the market wanted to win in the tender. They addressed the anti-monopoly committee, and the anti-monopoly committee returned us to the old system, even if the structure with the new management, with the new transparent rules of game. We work only transparently. So if the structure is open, then not all the participants are sincere in their desires, but I believe that this will change. So what we declare is what we are convinced in. We introduced the system of electronic procurements. In 2 months, we saved about 20%. We had tenders for the amount of 500,000 hryvnias, and we saved about 20%. As to auctions, we initiated together with the team Prozora the development of a new software which will allow us to organize electronic auctions. That's the know-how. In the nearest few months we will present it to the society. All our steps gave us the chance to not just get the profit in the system, but to channel it towards modernization. We planned 52 million hryvnias for modernization, together with the multiplying coefficient ratio. All our companies are profit-making companies. That's one of our requirements, which we include into our contract. All the money will be sent for modernization.
As for the taxes, there is one interesting thing about them. The last year, all the state reserve system had paid to the state budget 66 million hryvnia, including all taxes and duties, while it received from the state budget the same 66 million hryvnia. So there were no additional revenues, additional allocations from the state budget to the system, neither for storage of goods nor for buying goods. We believe that that's an improper system. In all the neighboring countries, this is based on the state budget allocations. So summing up, I believe that in order to not just speak about reforms, but to implement real reform, we need political support, and our example proves that having support from the Minister of Economy, from Mr. Abramovich's, we managed to reach some obvious successes. The next, professional staff is very important, and it allows to make real steps every day to implement the reform. The only thing which we require from civil society and mass media is to support us informationally and not to make impediments for us. I believe that we have made a crucial turn into direction of reform, and I believe that the next year will become the real year of changes. I invite Mr. Prokopchuk, First Deputy Head. Please speak very quickly. The government of Ukraine has made decision about a new way of storing oil and fuels. That is, Ukraine has to create the stock of fuels extra to what we have in our state reserves. why this stock is important, because it is a part of Ukrainian commitment as to the European part of the oil and fuel reserves, and the Ministry of Economic Development, Ministry of Fuel and Energy, who cooperate with the European Energy Community, made this commitment. And based on that commitment, within 5 years, Ukraine has to make a stock of more than 1 million tons of fuels, and we should develop the model of that stock, that is the structure of it, and we have involved the European Energy Community experts to develop the structure for the stock, and then we will work on its formation. The stock should be stored in the warehouses and storages of the State Reserve Company. Of course, all those warehouses and storages were built long ago. They are out of date, and we simultaneously work on their upgrading. And this cooperation allows us to apply new approaches to the business projects, and of course we will require human resources, material resources, and financial resources to make this system efficient. I invite Tatiana Yakupovich, advisor to our head on legal issues. One of our primary tasks was to make the inventory of the money payable, and we found out that there were a lot of court decisions about bankruptcy at the stage of enforcement, and for us there is a big problem to get our money back, and I would like to mention that only 16 million hryvnia were paid to our state reserve by those companies. What we can do in decreasing this accounts payable, and we work jointly with the state property fund, discussing which our enterprises will be privatized and how rest of our companies will be reorganized. Just like example, bread making companies will be united into one, another types of custodians will be united in other groups. There might be territorial reasons for not uniting the company, not merging the companies. In this case, they will be privatized. So, summing up what was said, I would like to emphasize that the new team reforming the state reserves has 3 tasks: to optimize the managerial structure, to optimize the state funds aimed at formation of the state reserve. And the third task is to bring the state reserve in compliance with the real needs of the state. So the general objective is to reform that huge post-Soviet monster, which is unable to resolve the necessary problems. Unfortunately, we have time just for one question, and we cannot hear the question. From mass media, I understood that Masachuk Vadim Antomovich was involved into corruption affairs and into separatist ideas. We found out that you tried to eliminate the research institute which deals with the issues of nanotechnologies. Why do you destroy it? What are your sources of information, and if you have facts, real facts, you may apply to the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, to the court, and to the law enforcement agencies. Dear friends, we have to finish our press conference. You may ask them off record. The next press conference will be in 1 minute. Thank you.